Our gospel reading today comes from Luke, chapter 24, verses 36 through 42. In the Passion Translation. I invite you to stand for our gospel reading. While they were still discussing all of this, Jesus suddenly appeared right in front of their eyes. Startled and terrified, the disciples were convinced that they were seeing a ghost. Standing there among them, he said, "Be at peace. I am the living God. Don't be afraid. Why are you so frightened? Don't let doubt enter your hearts. See my pierced hands and feet. See for yourselves. It is I, standing here alive. Touch me and know that my wounds are real. A spirit does not have a body of flesh and bone as you see that I have." Then he showed them his pierced hands and feet and let them touch his wounds. The disciples were ecstatic yet dumbfounded, unable to comprehend it. Knowing that they were still wondering if he was real, Jesus said, "Here, let me show you. Give me something to eat." They handed him a piece of broiled fish and some honeycomb, and they watched him eat. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. So I want to encourage you this morning to put away the distractions of the next 30 minutes or what's happening after church or what's happening, the meal that you have to finish or the special people that are coming over. Take just the next several minutes and let's sit at the feet of Jesus. And let's celebrate that goodness and celebrate the resurrection that has occurred. Can you imagine being one of those disciples? Could you imagine having gone through Good Friday and being at the feet of Jesus as he's hanging on a cross and seeing the nails come sticking out of his feet and seeing the nails out of his hands and wrists and seeing the crown of thorns and seeing all of that and just going, "Oh my goodness." And then 3 days later, the rest of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then hearing the ladies come and say, "He's risen, he's alive, something has happened." And then in the Gospel of Luke, we have the story of the Emmaus Road, the two that are on the road to Emmaus, and they're walking and they're going, and Jesus joins them and says, "Hey, don't you understand that all of this?" And he goes through the entire Old Testament and tells them all of these things. And they run back and they encounter this meeting. This meeting with the other disciples in a locked room, in a room that is kind of obscure, that's kind of hidden. And what do? They're sitting there and they're talking and they're hearing the two people from the road to Emmaus. And Jesus shows up. I can't even begin to grasp that. I can't even begin to fathom that. Can you imagine just sitting at the feet of Jesus and him saying, "See, feel my feet. Look at my hands. And here, touch it." Can you imagine the overwhelming emotion that would occur? The thought of it is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, think about it. They're sitting at the feet of Jesus, who they had seen crucified, who they had seen die, who they had seen buried. And they're sitting at his feet, and they're looking up at him, and he says, "Give me something to eat." I just can't imagine how powerful of a moment that would have been. Can you picture yourself there for just a minute? Can you picture yourself hearing Jesus say, look at my feet. You're sitting there, look at my feet. Put your hand in that hole. Talk about good news. Talk about life change. Talk about the power of God doing something great. Talk about a resurgence of hope. I think if I were there in that moment, I think I'd be speechless. I think I would just stare at Jesus. And I don't think, and it's not hard for me even now, not even being there, to think about and to experience and to see Jesus there, and the tears start coming. And the tears of hope, the tears of celebration, the tears of complete sorrow and complete joy mixing together. And just sitting at Jesus' feet and looking up at him and saying, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm alive. Let's eat together. Let's eat together. And as your mind thinks through all of those moments in the last couple days, if you were here Thursday, we had a reminder that Judas ate too. Jesus knew who was going to betray him. And yet, he still washes Judas' feet. He still gives food and breaks bread and gives it to Judas. Judas ate too. So sitting at the feet of Jesus, you think about, wow, Judas ate too. And if that's true, if Jesus can still do that for Judas, think how much he still could love us. And then to see him crucified and to see all of the emotions, so all of these emotions just coming together and pouring together. And then remembering that today is the first day of the Feast of Fruits. What is the Feast of Fruits? It's the first Sabbath, the first holy day after Passover. And it was given to the Israelite people while they were still wandering in the wilderness. And God says, when you enter the promise, when you enter into that promise, here's what you're going to do. The first grapes that come off the vines, you're going to come and take and present them to me. An offering of first fruits, and you're going to worship and you're going to celebrate. Is that not a description of Easter Sunday and Resurrection Sunday? Think about it. The first thing that you're going to do, that we get to do after the crucifixion, after the sacrifice of the Lamb, is we get to come and offer him our worship on a Sunday morning in praise and honor and just power. And I don't think it was by accident that it was the grapes that you were offered, the symbol of the wine that became blood. That's why Isaiah says those words. And remember, in order for something to come out of the ground, what has to happen? It has to be planted in the ground. And it has come forth in the first fruits, and Jesus is the first fruit of resurrection life. I saw today read somebody said Lazarus was resuscitated. He ended up dying again. The other girl that we talked about last week, Jairus' daughter, was just resuscitated. She ended up dying again. But Jesus was truly resurrected because he never dies again. There's so much hope in that. There's so much good news in that. There's so much for you and I as we sit at his feet. And we take in these moments, and I mentioned last week, Jairus' daughter, he says, give her something to eat. Why? And why does Jesus say this in the Gospel of Luke? Dead people don't eat. Ghosts don't eat. He's not just some figment of their imagination. He's participating in a meal with them, in a meal of the Feast of First Fruits, probably. And celebrating and letting it flow, the resurrection life that flows from Him to us. I can't imagine just sitting at His feet that first resurrection day. I can't imagine seeing all those pieces come together. Hearing the woman at the well come, or the women come from the tomb and say, He's risen, He's not there. Hearing Peter and John say, we're there. Hearing the disciples on the road to Emmaus who had also had a meal with Jesus and have sprinted 7 miles. They didn't record the time in that. It was probably a world record. Because they ran back to Jerusalem to say, hey, He's risen. And then sitting there talking about it, trying to figure it all out. And Jesus shows up. And they're at His feet. Experiencing hope, life, peace, joy. All of those pouring out of them as they sit at His feet and observe the scars and wounds from the nails. What emotion would you show if you were there? I think you'd feel pretty loved. I think you'd feel pretty amazed. I think you'd feel a little bit of that, is this really true? Like Thomas does. I think you'd feel a little of that, oh my word. It's funny that the disciples had to see the scars, but the religious leaders sure did believe it. They tell the guards, be quiet about it, we're not going to tell this to anybody. But He said He was going to do this. So don't tell anybody that happened. But the disciples get the privilege of sitting at His feet, despite all of that, and experiencing so much. So in a moment, I just want you to process in your mind. We won't take very long to do this, but I just want you to process and imagine that you are sitting at the feet of Jesus in that room. Just imagine it. If you need to close your eyes, don't fall asleep on me, but if you need to close your eyes, to imagine it, picture yourself and sit at the feet of the risen Jesus. And so, Jesus, as we picture ourselves in that room with you, smelling the smells, seeing the room, hearing the commotion. Help us to respond and lay down our lives and allow that resurrection power and hope to penetrate our lives deeply and forever change us. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for being willing to take the cross. Thank you for conquering death. Help us to live our lives for you. To remember what it would be at the feet of the risen Jesus. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. If that's something kind of a new thing for you or something that you want to explore more about, I want to invite you to talk with me or participate in a Facebook group. And later this week, I'm going to be starting a Facebook group, a Bible study about how to pursue Jesus, pursuing Jesus, and being together with Him. And so the great thing about doing it as a Facebook group is if you're on Facebook, just let me know that you want to do it. I'll send you the link to the group.